All right, coming to you live from DevOps Days Austin. I'm here with Clay Shafer. Andrew, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. So, you kicked off today. You were keynote number 1. Can you just give a summary of some of the topics that and thoughts that you had, like summarize and kicking people's butts?
Well, I had a framework around the history of Japanese samurai, how they rose from this class of kind of autocrats or bureaucrats, civil servants, then you become a warrior class, and they have this ritual way of resolving warfare, and then the Mongols come, and that changes everything because they're not participating in the ritualistic warfare that the samurai had adopted, and so then they become even more of a warrior class, and then you have this disruption and then I kind of tried to draw that back into there's this transition when the samurai were born to be samurai. When the Mongolians come and invade, the hordes come, now anyone who can swing a sword can now be a samurai. And that changes the fabric of the culture, and I think that in terms of technology cycles of disruption, that you can see some similar cycles where right now in technology, if you can configure a computer programmatically, then you don't need to be born, you don't need to have a scroll, you don't need to have a magic degree. If you can do that work, then someone will bring you in, and you can be a samurai in their army. And that was kind of and then I was also trying to paint this cultural picture around how the samurai really believed in cultivating themselves, and they were warriors and they fought with swords, but they also did calligraphy and philosophy and flower arrangements and tea ceremonies, and they tried to kind of cultivate this holistic being, and that as quote unquote DevOps people or in the DevOps movement, we've kind of focused on this optimization problem between developers and operations, but you also have this larger context of a business, and how do you fit into that, and can you if you can think about systems and complex systems, then why can't you apply the same types of thinking and the same types of metrics-driven decision-making to the holistic business?
Awesome. Well, so, and speaking of systems, how might you see this system play out over, say, the next 3 years? If you were to think of, this would be a logical playing out of DevOps evolution, this would be an awesome case scenario, this would be a bad case scenario, what would you see?
So I think that in one sense you're going to have all three. I think that there's, going back to another quote and this toss around about cloud computing and the future, is that I think DevOps is actually now, but it's not evenly distributed, and so I think you're going to see different arcs for different organizations where they're going to have the good, the bad, and the ugly in the future. So the next 3 years is not going to be the same for all these organizations. All of them are maybe getting the word DevOps, but they don't necessarily all kind of internalize some of the practices. And because the current state of the DevOps conversation is kind of noisy and ambiguous, so what people are adopting, how they're approaching things, is it a cultural-centric thing, or is it a tool-centric thing, or is it some opportunistic and optimized blend of the two, will kind of determine their future. And one of the things I've been saying is that you're going to get the DevOps you deserve. So if you think that you can buy DevOps, then I think you're in for a problem, because I think that people sell DevOps, people are selling DevOps, but you can't buy it.
So awesome. So just to conclude with, what would be the one thing, if you were the DevOps god, that you would say should happen to really ensure DevOps success?
Well, I gave this talk at Velocity last year, and I really believe this is true, that the success that people have with any of these transformational efforts, whether you're talking about Agile or DevOps, is really highly correlated with organizational learning. So this is a talk that's on my Twitter. I'm Little Idea on Twitter. It's pinned to the top so you can watch this. But you basically have these organizations where if you give them the same information, the same tools, the same instructions, on face they look like the same organization, but they'll get vastly different results. And my experience, having been involved in technology, having watched the Agile community and now the DevOps community attempt to transform these different organizations, that the results are highly correlated with the level of organizational learning. And there's these 7 dimensions. It's all very fascinating research from the 90s that I stumbled into, and that's kind of where I feel like the the cultural discussion where people talk about culture becomes actionable, because in so many of the other DevOps discussions or Agile discussions, when people say it's all about culture and it's all about people, they don't give you actionable or measurable framework to do anything in your organization. So you either are a learning organization and you kind of have these, and I don't think that's a binary. It's really a spectrum. It's sort of dimensional, and the model from Watkins and Marsick in the 90s is this 7-dimensional model of organizational learning, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. And that's my velocity talk from last year. So I think if you want to succeed in DevOps, then don't focus on DevOps. Focus on organizational learning and basically empowering that culture of continuous improvement inside of your organization, and then DevOps will manifest itself. And I said this in my keynote this morning, and this is a quote from an artist, so I'm kind of stealing from him, and he used the word art, and I use the word DevOps, and that is that you don't want to do DevOps, but you want to be in the state where DevOps is inevitable.
Awesome. And on that note, Andrew Clay Shafer, thank you so much.
Thank you.